The C&O Railroad reached Cass, West Virginia in 1900, and for 90 years, the valleys and hollows around Cass have echoed up the sounds of steam whistles and clanging bells and locomotive stack talk, along with the aroma of valve oil and coal smoke. The C&O's decision to build along the banks of the Greenbrier River was no accident. Although the connection with the Western Maryland at Durban was desirable, the potential to tap into the developing timber industry was even more desirable. So, as the C&O reached Cass, an interchange was planned with the newly chartered Greenbrier and Elk River Railroad. The Greenbrier and Elk River pushed up the slopes of Cheat Mountain along the Leatherbark Creek, climbing the steep terrain through 2 switchbacks before reaching the logging camp of Old Spruce, 6½ miles up the mountain. Shay locomotives eased the first pulpwood trains down the mountain to Cass in 1902. That tradition continued until 1960, when logging and mill operations ceased at Cass. The Shays made a comeback in 1963, when the state of West Virginia purchased the railroad and began tourist trips up Cheat Mountain. Perhaps the tradition will continue for another 90 years, in the land where the Shay Rules Cheat Mountain. The Cass Scenic Railroad is a living museum dedicated to logging days of the early 20th century. The Cass collection features a wide variety of logging equipment dating from the turn of the century. In addition to the log loader and steam skidder, there are original logging cars which were used at Cass. But the feature attractions of the Cass collection are the Shay locomotives, which will supply our head-end power for today's trips. Let's begin with Shay number 6. She was built for the Western Maryland Railroad in 1945 and saw only 4 years of service before being retired. She spent the next 26 years on display at the B&O Railroad Museum before being acquired by Cass in a trade for Shay number 1 and a Porter 040 owned by Cass. In her early years at Cass, the 162-ton Shay would venture up Cass Hill, but after several broken rails, she was confined to the shop and station areas. Next, we have Shay number 5. This 80-ton, 3-truck Shay was built by the Lima Locomotive Works in 1905 for the Greenbrier and Elk River Railroad, which means she was built for Cass. She has seen nearly 90 years of continuous service on her original line and truly rules Cheat Mountain. Finally, we have Shay number 2. The number 2 was built for the Mayo Lumber Company of Vancouver, British Columbia. Number 2 was retired from switching service on the Vancouver docks in 1964, making her one of the last Shays used in revenue service. This Pacific Coast Shay differs slightly from her East Coast cousins, with piston valves and a superheater, making her 25% more powerful. Number 2 also has the notoriety of being the only known Shay to have burned wood, oil, and coal for fuel. So, with the introductions completed, let's watch as the Cass Shays take their positions for the Great Shay Race. The route for our trains today is the same as in 1902, when the first segment of the Greenbrier and Elk River Railroad was completed to Old Spruce. The only difference is the new 100-pound rail, which will allow Western Maryland No. 6 to assault Cheat Mountain. From Old Spruce, Shay 6 will continue over the newly constructed line to Spruce. This new line was completed in 1992 and parallels the right-of-way of the original line to Spruce, which was completed around 1904. As Shay No. 6 heads for Spruce, Shays 2 and 5 will continue up Cheat Mountain to Bald Knob. So, with our trains made up, let's climb aboard behind Shay 2 and 5 as they prepare to do battle with Cheat Mountain. While Western Maryland No. 6 waits to back her train through the crossover, Shay 2 and 5 ease past the old C&O water tower that marks the junction of the old Greenbrier and Elk River Railroad. Just ahead are the Cass shops, as the line starts up the 2.6% grade of Cass Hill. From here, the line follows Leatherbark Creek before crossing Back Mountain Road, where the grade climbs to 4%. By the time we reach the first switchback, we're a little over 2 miles up the line from Cass. In the days of the logging railroads, switchbacks were used to gain elevation when the natural lay of the land could not accommodate the necessary curves for the line to continue upward. The operation is simple. The engineer simply pulls his train to the end of the switchback siding. The brakeman on the rear end throws the switch. Then the train backs out of the switchback siding, with the locomotive pushing the train up the next section of track. After climbing the 6% grade to Gumfield, Shay 2 and 5 performed a photo run, while Western Maryland No. 6 started up the grade out of the first switchback. After the photo run at Gumfield, both trains headed up the mountain towards Limestone Cut and the second switchback. Because of the number of runaway cars during the first few years of operation, runaround tracks were installed in both switchbacks at Cass. These short passing sidings enabled the locomotive to be on the Cass or downhill end of each train as they descended the mountain through the switchbacks. Today, all that is left of the runaround tracks is the extra-wide roadbed at each switchback. They were removed shortly after the Mauer Lumber Company took over the mill and railroad operations at Cass in the early 1940s. Whitaker Station is the first of 3 possible destinations for Cass trains, the others being Spruce and Bald Knob. Whitaker is located about 4 miles up the line from Cass and is believed to have been a work campsite, while the Greenbrier and Elk River Railroad was under construction. Today, the Whitaker Station is a picnic area, complete with restrooms, and is used as a rest stop on the trips to Bald Knob and Spruce. Construction of Whitaker Camp 1 was begun in 1991, and when completed, the Camp 1 site will display a steam skidder, diesel log loader, logging and camp cars in a scene reminiscent of a turn-of-the-century logging camp. After a brief stop at Whitaker, the trains continued up Cheat Mountain toward Old Spruce, battling grades of over 6% along the way. With the switchbacks behind, Western Maryland number 6 was able to keep her train in hot pursuit of Shays 2 and 5. At Old Spruce, Shay 2 and 5 continued up the grade toward Oates Creek, while Western Maryland number 6 eased onto the newly constructed line to Spruce and the new connection with the former Western Maryland main line. In 1902, the railroad built Camp 5, about 1.5 miles down Shaver's Fork from Old Spruce. From Camp 5, the town of Spruce was born. The town acquired its name from the buildings which were moved there from Old Spruce. In 1905, a mill to peel and cut logs began operation. One of the unique features about Spruce, besides being the most elevated town east of the Mississippi, was that there was no road to or from town. It was accessible by railroad only. The town prospered until the early 20s, when overcutting of the red spruce forests began the decline of logging in the area. By 1925, the mill had ceased operations, and by 1930 the town was abandoned, except for a fleet of Western Maryland 280 helper engines stationed at Spruce. Today, Spruce is the newest destination for Cass trains, and although the town is long gone, ruins of the old mill can still be seen. So, after number 6 makes a photo run at Spruce, there will be plenty of time for lunch, with a little time left to explore the site of the town with no road. After passing Old Spruce, Shays 2 and 5 continued on to Oats Creek, where there was a stop to take on water. This portion of the line was completed as the Cabin Fork branch, and was the last logging branch built at Cass by the Mauer Lumber Company. The Cabin Fork branch originally ran 12 miles up the mountain from Old Spruce, but only 4.5 miles of the line are in use today. This is the steepest part of the line, which was in use between 1950 and 1960, with grades ranging from 5 to 9% between Oats Creek and Bald Knob. After a photo run up the 9% grade leading to Bald Knob, there was a break in the action, long enough to enjoy lunch and the breathtaking view from the observation platform. To the northeast is the Greenbank National Radio Observatory. To the southeast is Cass, and the mountains between were once crisscrossed with over 200 miles of logging railroads. Bald Knob is also the site of Camp 105, the last fully operational logging camp operated by the Mauer Lumber Company. Originally, the tracks veered left just past the present Bald Knob Gate and circled the mountaintop with a 4,500-foot loop, which supported 2 skidder sets and Camp 105. While Shay 2 and 5 made a stop at Oats Creek to take on water, Shay 6 began her return trip to Cass, leaving behind the town of Spruce. With the watering completed, Shay 2 and 5 were on the move again as they eased their train down the grade towards a stop at Whitaker Station. while Western Maryland Shay 6 and some of the passengers made a rest stop at Whitaker Station. Shay 2 and 5 continued down the mountain towards the second switchback for a photo run up the 9% grade below Whitaker. By the time our trains have traveled the 1.1 miles between the first and second switchbacks, they have dropped over 200 feet in elevation. Along the way, they've descended through Limestone Cut and around the 29-degree curve at Gumfield. From the first switchback, it's 2¼ miles back to Cass and milepost 0 at the old C&O water tower. As the line winds its way back along the Leatherbark Creek, our trains will drop another 300 feet in elevation before arriving back in Cass. As our trains ease onto the old C&O mainline, we'd like to say thanks for joining us for highlights of the 1992 Railfan Weekend at the Cass Scenic Railroad, where the Shay Rules Cheat Mountain. Thanks for joining us.